Hello, cinema clowns, and welcome to yet another episode of the Day in Film MiniCast. We're going to jump right into the movie today. I watched Election from 1999, directed by Alexander Payne, and I'm happy to say I enjoyed it. Now, this is going up after Election Day, but as I'm sure you all know, this is a very big election. There is a lot of buzz around it, and I thought it'd be kind of funny to just watch a movie called Election on Election Day. Ha 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 ha. Now, forgive me if my thoughts are a little sporadic. I'm just kind of wrapped up in the election right now. I'm just into it, you know. I'm not a particularly political person, but you know, it's still pretty important, and I'm paying some attention to it. But anyway, let's talk about Election. This is an Alexander Payne film from 1999, and it took me a second to realize when I saw that director credit that this is the same guy who made The Holdovers from only a year ago. And The Holdovers was a favorite of mine. I really enjoyed that movie. I watched it with my pa, and it captures that Alexander Payne, or at least in The Holdovers and in this movie, which we'll get into soon, he captures a very comfortable, familiar, relaxed environment, and I think a lot of it is the way the characters the way he directs the actors to deliver these characters. Every person in this movie feels like someone that you can sub in these people at school in this movie for people who actually went to your high school, or a teacher that you actually knew, and I think the movie would still fit pretty fine. And I think that's a very difficult thing to do, because these characters are so specific and kind of weird, but at the same time, you know, they're interchangeable. You know, like Reese Witherspoon's character. You know, I'm sure you know A. Tracy at school, and I'm sure you know one Paul at school, and one Tammy, and one Mr. McAllister. You know, these characters are very realistic, and it helps deliver this kind of silly but also serious story really well. And that's another thing I want to get into. The story this movie tells is one of petty drama, but I think that's what Alexander Payne's specialty is in. Just like The Holdovers, a lot of it is just sort of, not petty, but it's just very low stakes. You know, like, oh, I'm just having a blast with this student, and now I'm getting in trouble, and he's a little weird, but I'm a little weird, and it's just back and forth banter, blah, 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 blah. And they start to love each other. And it's not the exact same in this movie, but it is still, at least partially. No, the whole movie is spurred on by a student-teacher relationship, and not like that, even though that is an aspect of it. And that's the next thing. This movie is very funny. There are multiple scenes in this movie in which I was laughing a lot. Just like, not a lot of huge moments, but just little, like, good chuckles, like good hard, like, huss, you know, like just randomly throughout the movie, which I do appreciate in a film like this. You know, it's kind of hard to take a high school presidential election 1000% seriously, but it does manage to keep you invested while not taking it super seriously like it's a presidential election. The characters are written incredibly well and very, again, realistically, especially Mr. McAllister. Watching this guy, like, you watch his life crumble before his eyes, and then he picks it right back up like it's nothing. You know, this whole movie is about kind of being spiteful and regretting and just kind of being frustrated generally, and a lot of that is because of Mr. McAllister. A lot of the pretty much all of the turmoil in this movie is caused by Mr. McAllister and the lesbian, but you know, we'll get into that when we get into it. And to speak on some of these other characters, the characters in this movie are balanced incredibly well. It doesn't really feel like any characters get more screen time than they deserve or less. It feels like every character was wrapped up pretty convincingly, especially Mr. McAllister. Being the lead of the movie, you'd hope so, but watching his character go through everything and kind of suffer all these consequences does feel kind of satisfying, if you do feel a little bad for him. The football player, whose name I already forgot, he is a very funny character, and the way his character is played he reminded me a lot of Bill and Ted, or Keanu Reeves. I think that's Bill, maybe, I don't know, I need to rewatch Bill and Ted, but it reminded me a lot of him, like with the voice and the haircut and everything. He's a very fun character in this movie, and you know, Tracy, she's played incredibly well by Reese Witherspoon. Sorry, I'm talking so fast, guys, I'm just so excited. she's played very well by Reese Witherspoon. You really do believe that she is an academic weapon, super ultra committed to extracurriculars and looking as good as you can for a college kind of thing. I do appreciate that, and I think it's a good thing that they portrayed it so perfectly, because there are two kinds of academic weapons, and she is playing the one that I'm much less of a fan of. The film is shot very well. There were a lot of very pretty moments and locations. This movie takes place in Arkansas, I want to say, and it's a great setting for a movie like this. It really aids in making the movie feel more like familiar and homey, even though I've grown up and live in California right now. It is just kind of nice to see how the movie portrays this area, and how even if you've never been even on a street like that, it feels at least a little bit familiar, because it's just such a good setting for a movie. I really like how horrible Mr. McAllister is, and how throughout the movie it's revealed that he's kind of like a shithead. I think the score of this film is worked in pretty well. There's a lot of not pop music, but just era appropriate music, which fits in again very well. This is a very late 90s, early 2000s movie, which I do really appreciate. I like all the election stuff, which is most of the movie. Just watching these characters interact with it in their own little ways is again very entertaining. And the narration, I almost forgot to mention the narration. The narration in this movie, which comes from multiple different characters, really does aid in making it feel more intimate and personal. At times you are literally inside of their heads, and just hearing what they say and what they think is it's very helpful for a viewer to really get into the psyche of this person and how deranged they probably are, because I think every character in this movie is at least in some fashion deranged. But I don't really have much more to say about Election. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Definitely not my favorite Alexander Payne film, but of his two that I've seen, obviously this one, at least to me, is not as good as The Holdovers, but I'll take what I can get. But again, with all that out of the way, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoyed election night, because it's a pretty important night. And if you don't live in America, who cares? Actually, you probably still do. Yeah. Bye now, y'all. I'll see you in the theaters.